Episode 12, titled Leverage Inheritance and External Services, we explore how smart teams reuse existing security work from trusted providers to shorten timelines and strengthen assurance. The Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, or FedRAMP, encourages clear statements of what you inherit and what you implement, because duplication wastes effort and obscures accountability. When inheritance is explicit, you move faster with fewer surprises, since a portion of your control story already lives in someone else's audited environment. Our aim is practical and disciplined. Name where reuse is appropriate, prove it with records you can show, and concentrate your energy on the parts of the boundary only you can secure. The payoff is not just speed, it is a cleaner risk argument that scales as customers and integrations grow. Inheritance, in plain language, means an upstream provider implements controls that your system uses as is and relies on for protection. You point to their evidence, not to avoid your own responsibilities, but to acknowledge where enforcement truly occurs. The model works because security in the cloud is layered. Physical, environmental, and hypervisor controls sit below platform services. Platform services sit below applications. Applications sit beside operational processes that keep the whole stack healthy. When you inherit, you trace a requirement to the layer that enforces it and then show how your configuration actually engages that enforcement. The key is accuracy. If your architecture does not route through the provider's control, you cannot claim to inherit it. If it does, you must still demonstrate that you enable and monitor the relevant features. To make the idea concrete, enumerate your providers by role so ownership lines are unmistakable. Infrastructure suppliers operate data centers, networks, and the virtualization substrate. Platform providers deliver managed databases, message queues, identity services, content delivery networks, and similar building blocks. Specialized security services add capabilities such as centralized logging, vulnerability discovery, secret storage, and runtime protection. Government-shared platforms may offer agency-operated tenants for monitoring, identity, or integration that you can plug into under established rules. Each category brings a different slice of control coverage. Listing them openly does not dilute your responsibility. It gives reviewers a structured way to see how protections compose across the stack and where your team must add the missing pieces. With providers identified, document scope precisely for every relevant control. Is it inherited, partially shared, or fully implemented by you? Inherited means the upstream provider enforces the requirement end-to-end, and you consume it without modification beyond configuration. Shared means you and the provider each carry measurable work. Perhaps the provider supplies a cryptographic boundary while you manage key rotation policy and user access. Implemented means your boundary enforces the control with your technology and procedures. This categorization is not a filing exercise. It is the basis for sampling and testing. When auditors ask for proof, they expect to see the enforcement point, the configuration that engages it, and the operational artifact that demonstrates it worked on a given date. Ambiguity here becomes friction later. A classic example illustrates why inheritance matters. Your service runs on a major cloud platform whose data centers control physical access with guards, cameras, badge systems, and layered segmentation. That same platform manages host hardening, hypervisor patching, and isolation between tenants. You do not recreate any of that, you inherit it. The question for assessment is whether you can show that your workloads actually live where those controls apply and that the provider's authorization is current. You present region and service identifiers, subscription or account details, and references to the provider's authorization to operate, or ATO, after first use, with dates that cover your assessment window. Then you pivot to what you implement: your network segmentation, your identity model, your backup schedules, and your incident processes. The seam is clean. Theirs below the line, yours above it. External services extend the pattern beyond the hosting platform, and each requires careful documentation of authorization status, data types handled, and interconnections. If you use a managed identity service, record whether it holds user credentials, tokens, or only assertions. If you use a third-party content delivery network, record whether it caches controlled content or serves only public assets. If you ship logs to an analytics provider, record which fields are collected, how they are protected, and how access is governed. For each service, note the kind of authorization it possesses, federal, commercial attestation, or agency-operated acceptance, and whether your architecture relies on that assurance for inherited controls. The goal is traceability. A reader should see at a glance what flows where and why you trust it. A common trap is claiming inheritance without provider evidence, scope clarity, or explicit attestation. Saying encryption at rest is inherited is not enough. You must show the storage service, the configuration state, the key management posture, and the provider's statement of conformance that ties to your region and service tier. Similarly, asserting that vulnerability management is inherited from a platform does not absolve you from patching your own containers or runtimes. The test is simple and strict. Can you open a dated artifact from the provider that describes the control, and can you open a dated artifact from your environment that shows usage of that control? Where either link is missing, inheritance becomes assertion, and assertion does not survive assessment. An easy win is to lean on provider responsibility matrices and inheritance spreadsheets that spell out provider versus customer duties for each control family. Good platforms publish these in plain language. Who configures firewall rules? Who rotates system keys? Who owns tenant isolation boundaries? Who supplies physical security attestations? And they often map responsibilities to recognizable artifacts. Import these matrices into your own catalog and annotate them with your system's identifiers, the toggles you selected, and the evidence locations you will use. This saves hours of negotiation later because you begin discussions with a shared vocabulary and a pre-agreed division of labor. It also trains your engineers to think in terms of enforceable lines rather than vague notions of "the cloud handles it." Contracts deserve attention because inheritance is a living dependency. Require in your agreements that providers notify you of changes that affect inherited controls, service deprecations, region posture shifts, cryptographic policy updates, logging retention alterations, or incident thresholds. Tie those notifications to operational responses you will execute, such as configuration audits, compensating control reviews, and customer advisories. If a provider narrows a feature that you depend on for compliance, the contract should give you time and information to adapt without falling out of compliance. This is risk management in prose. You are writing the playbook for how you will stay synchronized with a moving upstream target. Consider a scenario where your software as a service centralizes logs through an external monitoring platform while an agency retains oversight. Your application emits detailed events to the provider's collector. The provider maintains storage, encryption, access controls, and analytics. Your team manages normalization, correlation rules, and alerting thresholds. The agency receives dashboards and monthly summaries. The inheritance statement explains that storage protections and platform availability are inherited. Correlation logic and escalation are implemented, and reporting cadence is shared under a memorandum with the sponsor. Evidence includes the monitoring provider's security summary, your configuration exports, alert runbooks, and dated reports delivered to the agency. Nothing here is left implied. Every step names who does it, what proves it, and when it is reported. Your evidence plan should be explicit and compact. Collect ATO letters or provisional authorizations for the providers you depend on, summarize their scope in one paragraph each, and link to the most recent continuous monitoring results where available. Obtain formal security summaries or control mappings that align to the same control catalog you use in your System Security Plan, or SSP, after first use. Where a provider offers test statements or third-party assessments, file them alongside your own evidence and label them by control family. Version everything, date everything, and keep a short index so assessors can find artifacts without rummaging. The less time you spend proving the obvious, the more time you can spend explaining the parts of the story that are uniquely yours. Hold a sticky idea as you finalize your approach. Inherit strengths. Implement the gaps your boundary needs. Inheritance is not an excuse to lower assurance. It is a way to move the line of implementation to where it is most effective. If a provider's key vault offers hardware-backed protections you could not replicate economically, inherit it and focus on clean key usage and rotation policies in your application. If a platform's network segmentation is coarse for your workload, implement finer-grained controls at the service mesh or application layer. The art is in composing the two into a whole that is stronger than either layer alone. then explaining the composition so others can verify it. When you need a quick alignment, run a speed round in your next planning session using 5 prompts. Who is the provider? What control is at issue? What evidence proves inheritance? What contract terms protect the dependency? And what monitoring responsibilities remain with you? The answers should be short and spoken without hesitation. If any prompt stalls the room, you have found a weak joint in the design or the documentation. Fixing it may be as simple as enabling a configuration export, adding a clause to an agreement, or scheduling a quarterly check that you can point to later. Small repairs now prevent large findings later. We close by recapping benefits and turning to practice. Inheritance accelerates delivery, concentrates effort on distinctive risks, and makes your authorization package clearer because fewer controls are simulated at the wrong layer. External services extend capabilities without ballooning scope, provided their assurances and data handling are documented and current. Your next move is immediate and high value. Draft an inheritance register today that lists each provider, the controls you inherit, the evidence you hold, the contract guardrails you rely on, and the monitoring you perform. Share it with engineering, operations, your assessment partner, and your sponsor. When everyone can recite the same reuse story, assessment becomes confirmation, not discovery, and your security posture becomes both stronger and easier to explain. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.